In today's podcast, we're going to bust some tired excuses about why we are sometimes too busy. And we're going to place the blame squarely on management's shoulders. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Intentional Success Podcast, where we unpack the top strategies, explore business trends, and drill down into best practices to help your live events production business grow and scale on purpose. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. Well, there's one thing I've learned about scalable companies as we've moved towards this model over the past few years, and that I hear fewer and fewer complaints about we're always too busy. We're too busy to get things done because scalable companies are doing something a little bit different. And they're doing it with fewer people, which is curious. So let's talk about that today. I believe this in my heart of hearts, that you don't need more people in your business. Very rarely do you need to hire more people. You generally need them to do less. The exception is young growing companies that are increasing their business 50 and 100% a year are going to naturally need to add folks, but they're not going to need to add them at the pace that you would expect. And where are they going to find these people? Well, that's a great question. Anyone that says there's a shortage of qualified people to do your shows, to work on your production team, to support your production steps, anybody who says that is probably part of the problem I'm going to talk about today. Because there's not a shortage of qualified people. They're hiding from you. Look, staffing your projects, your shows, your events is more important than finding gear, right? We can find gear anywhere. Finding people is difficult. Recruiting people is more difficult than honestly anything else you do. And I'll give you that. It's your most important job. Okay. It's the one thing that you can do that will guarantee your success above everything else that you do. All the drawings, all the plannings, all the test runs, the equipment sourcing, all the gear in the world won't fix a bad crew. Okay. People are the most important thing that we do. So why do so many companies neglect the mission critical task of finding, recruiting, hiring, and supervising good folks? And instead they complain that they are too busy. Okay. Now, I wrote a blog about this years ago. Okay. And in it, I use the analogy, as I often do, about restaurants. And I love the parallels in restaurants. And I can do the same thing with, theatrical work. But theatrical work is too obvious for what we do. But restaurants are almost the same thing. It's the same level of chaos and excitement and urgency and finish, and where quality people actually make a difference. So imagine a chef who can prepare dinner for 20 people by herself in 2 hours. Can she double her output by adding another chef? Of course she can. 2 chefs could prepare 40 meals, right? Each doing 20 meals if they're working at the same pace. But dinner for 100, are you going to hire 5 chefs and have them each independently create 20 meals? Okay. Now, that would be wasteful, right? It'd be inefficient. It'd be really expensive because chefs are the highest paid people in the kitchen. So instead of hiring more chefs, our chef would probably hire 8 assistants, maybe a sous chef, maybe some line cooks, okay? Maybe some prep cooks. And these people would focus on specific tasks. Okay? Now, the bigger the team, the more specific the tasks become. As the organization grows, everybody's focus gets smaller and smaller. So you don't have people running all the way across the kitchen, moving back and forth from station to station. They will tend to stay more on their station. But here's the thing. The elephant in the room is that if the chef has to supervise these people, she's going to neglect something else, right? More workers don't always make your life easier. The quality of your supervision is going to matter. Okay. Sometimes a chef needs another chef. Right now, you could probably think of a big show you did. You had your best production manager on it, and it was chaos. It was a struggle. it all came out fine in the end. But what would have happened if you had had a second production manager working for the first production manager on that job? What would have happened if if you were able to double the amount of supervision for the teams? If you had two people who were perfectly in sync about what needed to get done, could your production manager use an assistant, okay, who is not one of the line cooks, who's not dicing onions, but helping make sure that the meal is prepared as planned? Your shows could use the same thing. So I have a coaching client who was growing. He's growing his company. He's doing a great job. But at the time we started working together, he had a lot of employees, and he kept hiring people because he thought he needed them, because they seemed to be busy all the time. They were constantly putting out fires. And what happened was all these people became his time suck. So he was no longer the chef. He was constantly answering questions. He was constantly dealing with behavior issues, fixing their mistakes. He got to the point where he'd stay late at night and do their work themselves because at least he knew it was going to get done correctly. He was aging very quickly until we recognized and we pointed out that, look, you've got too many people here. You're spending all your time supervising people. Okay, get down to the people that would make a difference, who would do the work without being asked if they just knew what the end result was going to be. And that criteria changed his life. Okay, he actually reduced his staff by 50% almost overnight, and work instantly got better, right? Now, there's a couple things going on here. One is, for each of us, there is a limit to how many people we can supervise. Not everybody is good at supervising people, but there's another thing going on here. Unqualified people, people who are untrained, lack aptitude, or have bad attitudes, make everyone feel more busy, in addition to requiring more supervision. The act of having them there causes more work than it solves, right? And you're thinking of that situation happening right now, and it does happen all the time, okay? Because the frustration of compensating for poor workers will demoralize the rest of the team. It's frustrating. It makes you crazy. You don't get to sleep. You have to do other people's work. It's not fun, right? Now, it's not because there's a shortage of good workers. There's a shortage of good supervisors. So in a scalable business, we want employees that contribute at their highest and best use of their skills and aptitude more of the time. Now, there's no room for marginal contributors, right? Personnel are not added just to fix a hole in a process, right? And there's not room for people who don't understand their own level of contribution. In other words, if they get outside of their wheelhouse and create problems in other areas. The best workers, we all know, are the ones who are eager to stay busy. They are eager to learn. They are happier when they're assigned tasks that fit their experience that they can be successful at. On the other hand, we have all worked with project managers that can't delegate, okay? You've seen stagehands standing around while the project manager tapes down cable or schleps gear. Why? Well, project manager, they're the best at it. It's easier for me to do this than to explain to somebody what I want done, which means they really suck at their job of project management. Now, they may be awesome at a lot of things, but they are not awesome at putting the right crew together and using them properly. For the same reason, a chef doesn't need to dice onions for 500 meals. A PM's job is to allow everyone else to focus on their jobs. Okay? Bodies don't solve the problem. We can't help people by throwing bodies at a project. Okay? We need something better. We need outcomes. So, to solve this problem of being too busy, we have to start focusing on the outcomes, not the process. If we can define the outcomes, the process becomes simpler. Okay. Event designers in our world are the chefs. They're creating the idea of what the finished product is going to look like, and they're setting the standard for the fit and finish. Okay. They won't necessarily tell you how to get there. Okay. A chef is not going to tell you how to dice onions. They're going to tell you what the dice of the onions in this dish is. Right. Production managers run teams of project managers or department leads, just like sous chefs run teams of line chefs working for the chef or the designer. right? One line chef is in charge of a group of prep cooks and manages a team of prep cooks. Each sous chef, line chef, and cooks, they all know their own roles and responsibilities. Everybody comes prepared, does their job. Someone tells them what the design is. They see the plan. They understand what they're assigned to get ready and when it needs to be done by, and they do it. That chain of command in a chef's kitchen is sacred, right? Great TV shows about this. They're fun to watch, right? Now, in our event world, we actually have the same command structure, but most of us have not been raised or trained in the regimen of that command structure. It just kind of exists, and we don't always understand why, right? So the production managers and project managers that don't understand their roles will often take on too much detailed work, and their line workers are going to lose focus. Right? Chaos is going to ensue, fingers start to point, and we need more help. We are too busy. So there's something else going on here, because I know these three things to be true. Number one, if you hire the right project leads, you will need fewer workers, right? If you use fewer workers, every worker is more important. And hiring better workers means you need fewer of them. And I just said the same thing 3 different ways. The design of the show or the meal must meet standards, but how we get there also matters. The journey matters. Okay? A journey of chaos to a good show is not a good show. Right? So too busy. Too busy is a symptom of, one, poor staffing, which comes from poor planning, which comes from poorly defined outcomes. And it starts at the top of a business. I'm blaming you, owners and management, for not clearly defining the outcomes and letting people do their jobs. Micromanagement creates too busy. When you have all 3 of these circumstances, poor staffing, poor planning, and poorly defined outcomes, you will move from crisis to crisis. It is your life. It is the culture of your business. And you will desperately be hoping for downtime to catch your breath and clean up that god-awful mess in the warehouse. How do we fix it? Where do you need to start? I'm glad you asked. Look, number one, we have to be crystal clear on what the finished product needs to look like. We spend too much time telling people how to get to the finished product instead of what the finished product is. Don't assume that everyone around you has the same standard, okay, or that the purpose of the work you're doing is obvious. You don't just tell people we need to put all the cases in the middle of the ballroom. You tell them why you need to put the cases in the middle of the ballroom during load-in, so we have room to get the rigging and the stage in on the upstage side of the ballroom. Okay? These things we kind of learn intuitively, but you never have to stop. You never get to stop communicating in production management. So be crystal clear what the finished product needs to look like. Define the tools, the support, and the personnel needed to achieve the outcome. And I can turn to the head rigger and said, you have these 2 top riggers, you have this ground rigger, and you have these 4 hands, and you have this snorkel lift and this scissors lift, okay? And you have this much time. Here's the drawing, here are the points, here's the order of priority, and we're going to come in and move behind you as you work through the ballroom, okay? Don't compromise on the staff required, because if the person you just explained that to doesn't understand what you just said, okay, they are not the right person for that job, right? Which means now you're going to have to do their job as well as yours. So there's not a labor shortage. There's a shortage of qualified people to specify, recruit, and schedule the highly qualified labor that is hiding from your special kind of chaos. They're out there, but you need to be a better company before they're going to come to you and choose to work with you. Thanks for listening. If you want to find out more about today's episode, go to trstimson.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes, related links, and tons of other valuable resources. If you haven't already subscribed to the Intentional Success Podcast, please do so, and I'd greatly appreciate if you would rate and review the show. Also, if you think you might be a good fit to work together or want more information about the Stimson Group, I'd love to hear from you. Visit trstimson.com for more information.